Hey, my name is Caleb Dawson. I'm 33 years old, and I live alone in a small cabin just outside Cedar Ridge, Colorado. If you've never heard of Cedar Ridge, that's not surprising. It's the kind of mountain town people pass through on their way somewhere with better Wi-Fi. We have one grocery store, one diner, a hardware shop run by a man who charges $20 for a box of nails and considers that fair, and enough pine trees to make you feel genuinely small if you spend too long looking up. I've lived here most of my life. For years, my days look the same. Wake up before sunrise. Make coffee strong enough to strip the finish off a countertop. Head to whatever job was waiting. I'm a carpenter by trade. I build things, fix things, occasionally rescue projects that someone else abandoned halfway through because they underestimated what they were getting into. That last one is more common than you'd think. The work was steady. Good, even. Or at least that's what I told myself. The truth is, I'm not great at sitting still. Not great at asking for help, either. Lauren used to say I had the emotional communication skills of a fence post, and she wasn't entirely wrong. When things got hard between us, I worked more. When we should have talked, I built something instead. You can only do that for so long before the other person gets tired of waiting. 5 years before that October, Lauren sat across from me at our kitchen table and told me she was leaving. There was no other man. No dramatic blow-up. She just wanted a bigger life than Cedar Ridge was going to give her. "You're a good man, Caleb," she said. "I just don't think this life is enough for me." After she left, I got pretty good at keeping people at arm's length. Not on purpose. Or maybe on purpose, I'm still not sure. I just stopped leaving room for anything that might walk out again. The years passed. The house we'd planned together was sold. The wedding that never happened stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like just a fact. I worked. I came home. I ate dinner alone, usually something out of a "can I tell you" was fine because that's what you say when someone asks. I watched television. I did it all over again. Have you ever noticed you're comfortable with being lonely? Not devastated. Not miserable. Just comfortable. Like it's a habit you stopped questioning. That's where I was. And honestly, I wasn't looking to change it. Then came that Thursday evening in October. I'd spent all day repairing a deck for a couple about 40 minutes outside town. The job ran longer than expected, mostly because the husband kept coming out to supervise and offering opinions that weren't helping. By the time I loaded my tools into the truck, the sky had already started doing that thing it does before a mountain storm, turning a color that isn't quite right. The radio warned about heavy rain. Possible flooding. Drivers advised to avoid remote roads. I took the back road anyway. I'd driven it hundreds of times. It saved 15 minutes, and I'd been awake since 5 a.m. Sometimes logic takes a backseat to the idea of getting home faster. About 2 miles in, I saw the SUV. Hood up. Parked at an angle that said the driver hadn't chosen to stop there. 2 women standing beside it. One pacing, one watching the empty road like she was trying to will a tow truck into existence. No houses out there. No gas stations. Just trees in every direction and a sky that was darkening faster than it should have been. I slowed and pulled over. The woman nearest the road turned quickly. For just a second, relief crossed her face, then she caught herself. I got out into the wind. The air already smelled like rain. Not the quick kind. As I walked toward them, one stepped forward. The other immediately grabbed her arm. That was my first clue they weren't the same type of person, even if their faces were identical. "Are you okay?" I asked. The one who'd stepped forward nodded quickly. "Honestly? Not really. Her sister, our car died." I looked at the SUV. "What happened?" "Started making a noise about 10 minutes ago and then just stopped," the first one said. We introduced ourselves. The optimistic one was Emma. The one looking at me like she was already mentally noting my license plate was Ava. I checked the engine. Checked the battery. Tried restarting it. The engine made one sound like it was considering the idea, then changed its mind. "Any luck?" Emma asked. "Not yet." I tried once more. Nothing. Actually, no. Not at all. Ava folded her arms. "So we're stuck." At the moment. That's comforting. Emma shot her a look. Ava shrugged like she wasn't going to apologize for stating facts. What are you two doing out here? I asked. They'd inherited land nearby from their grandmother. Came up to see it. Got lost following a handwritten map that, as far as I could tell from the description, was more artistic impression than navigation tool. Thunder rolled somewhere behind the mountains. I checked my phone. The nearest tow service wouldn't reach us until morning. The nearest hotel was 30 minutes away. Cell reception out here was unreliable even on good days. Emma had one bar, Ava had nothing. The rain started about 8 minutes later. First a few drops. Then the sky just opened up. Within 2 minutes we were standing under a roadside shelter the size of a bus stop, which offered approximately the protection of a large newspaper. Nobody spoke for a while. Then Emma looked at me. Not at the road, not at the storm. Directly at me. There was a pause where I could see her deciding whether or not to say the thing she was about to say. Caleb? Yeah. She glanced at Ava. Ava gave her a look that said don't. Emma said it anyway. Would it be all right if we stayed with you tonight? Ava immediately stepped in. Emma, are you serious right now? What's the alternative? We stand here until morning. We don't know this man. We've been talking for 20 minutes. That's not the point. I let them argue. It was a fair argument. If I were Ava, I'd have said the same thing. When they finally both looked at me, I said, I understand if you'd rather wait here. I can leave you my number, call someone in town to come out. Ava looked at Emma. Emma looked at the rain. How far is your place? Ava asked. 20 minutes. Another pause. Fine, Ava said. The word landed like a door closing. Not warm, but not a no. And just like that, everything changed. The drive back to my cabin was quiet. The rain made the windshield nearly opaque in patches. Emma sat in the passenger seat. Ava sat behind me, which I'm pretty sure was deliberate. She had a full view of my face in the rearview mirror the entire drive. I caught her watching me a few times. I didn't blame her. I probably would have done the same. About 20 minutes later, we turned onto the gravel road to my property. The cabin sat near the edge of a clearing. From the outside it's not much. The porch railing had needed repainting for 2 years, and I kept meaning to fix the third porch step, which sagged under weight in a way I'd stopped noticing. Inside was better. At least that's what I told them. That's exactly what someone in a horror movie would say, Ava said. Emma laughed. I laughed. Ava's expression didn't change, but something around her eyes shifted slightly. Inside, warm, dry, fireplace going within a few minutes. I handed them towels and dug out oversized sweatshirts from a storage closet that I maybe should have reorganized sometime this decade. The sleeves came down past Emma's hands. She looked in the mirror and made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan. I look like I borrowed my dad's clothes when I was 8. You kind of do, Ava said. For a moment they were just two sisters making fun of each other. The tension that had been sitting in the room walked out quietly. I made soup while they changed. Simple vegetable soup. I'd made it enough times that I could do it without thinking, which was good because I'd added the seasoning twice without realizing it until it was already in the pot. I didn't mention that. They ate 2 bowls each and didn't complain, so either they didn't notice or they were too hungry to care. We sat around the table and talked. Nothing significant. Emma was a graphic designer. Ava worked in urban planning, which made sense. She'd been quietly assessing the structural integrity of my cabin since she walked in. I told them about a remodel I'd done for a family in town that turned into a 6-month project because the husband and wife disagreed on every single decision, and I became an accidental therapist for both of them separately on alternating Tuesdays. Emma laughed at that. Ava almost did. Later, Emma wandered toward the bookshelf. I knew the moment she picked up the photograph. I always know, the way you develop a sixth sense about the things in a room that carry weight. Who's this? It was me and Lauren. Summer afternoon. Both of us smiling at something off camera, probably something her mother had said. Neither of us knowing what was coming. Her name was Lauren. I picked up my coffee cup. My fiancée. She left about 5 years ago. Emma set the frame back carefully. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. I said that the way people say things they've practiced saying enough times that it almost sounds true. Ava glanced toward the photograph, then at me, then away. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The fire crackled. Rain tapped against the windows. For a few minutes we just sat in the quiet of it, three people who'd met 3 hours ago, sharing a silence that wasn't uncomfortable. I've thought about that a lot since. How quickly that can happen. How a storm can strip away the small talk and leave people just being people. I gave them the guest room. They protested. I insisted. It wasn't generosity, honestly, it was the only thing that made sense, and arguing about it would have taken longer than just doing it. I slept on the couch. Or tried to. I don't actually sleep well anywhere except my own bed, which I'd learned and then forgotten and remembered again that night while staring at the ceiling. At some point I heard the rain ease off. Then stop. Then silence. Morning came grey and clean. The storm had scrubbed everything. Emma was already in the kitchen when I woke up. Standing at the window with a mug in both hands, looking out at the pine trees the way people do when they're somewhere they didn't expect to feel calm. Morning, I said. Morning. She turned. I hope you don't mind, I figured out your coffee situation. My what? You have 4 different bags open and none of them are labeled. I made a decision and committed to it. I looked at the pot. It smelled fine. More than fine, actually. How do you know how I take it? Black, right? You seem like a black coffee person. Yeah. I have a gift. She turned back to the window. Ava appeared a few minutes later. She said, "Good morning," in a voice that was approximately 17% warmer than anything she'd said the night before. For Ava, that was significant progress. Over breakfast, Emma pulled out a folded piece of paper. Their grandmother's handwritten map. The moment I looked at it, something clicked. I recognized the landmark near the eastern edge. This is next to my property. Both sisters went quiet. You're kidding, Ava said. I'm not. Emma started laughing first. Then Ava. The kind of laughter that comes out of something being too unlikely to do anything else with. 2 hours later we were in my truck, heading into the mountains. The old entrance to the property was barely visible, an iron gate leaning sideways off one hinge, a fence that had given up on itself years ago. Beyond it, several acres of forest and open meadow. Wild grass knee-high. Tree branches low and tangled across what used to be a path. Emma stepped out first. She moved slowly, like she wasn't sure what the ground was going to tell her. Then the cabin came into view through the trees. The roof sagged on one side. The paint had peeled back so far in places there was just grey wood underneath. Vines had climbed the left wall up to the window ledge. 2 windows had cracked and one was missing entirely. Emma stopped walking. Oh wow! It wasn't a sad sound. It wasn't a happy one either. It was the sound of something bigger than either. Ava said nothing. She just stood there looking at it. I stood back and let them have it. Inside, dust, old furniture, books still on shelves, handmade quilts folded over a couch arm. Photographs covering most of one wall. The place smelled like cedar and age and something I can only describe as the specific quality of a room that was once filled with someone's daily life. Emma picked up a photograph. A younger woman beside a horse, squinting into sunlight. That's her, Emma said quietly. Her voice changed on those 2 words. Thinned out. She stood there for a long time just holding it. I'd been about to say something, I don't remember what, but I didn't. Sometimes the right move is to just let someone stand in a feeling without interrupting it. Ava found a box of photographs on a shelf. Birthday parties, holiday dinners, neighbors gathered on someone's porch. The evidence of a full life they'd only heard about secondhand. Then Emma found the journal. Leather cover, worn almost smooth at the edges. She opened it like she was handling something fragile. Handwriting filled every page, small and precise, ink that had faded to brown in places. She read a few lines silently. Then she sat down on the dusty couch without looking for somewhere better to sit, and she read. At some point she reached a page that made her stop. She sat still for a moment. Then she stood up abruptly and said, I need some air, and walked outside. Ava looked at me. I went to the doorway. Emma was standing on the crumbling porch steps, arms crossed, looking at nothing in particular. I didn't ask. After a minute she said, "She wrote about us. About hoping we'd come here someday." She stopped. I didn't expect that. There's not a lot you can say to something like that. I didn't try. I just sat on the step beside her and waited until she was ready to go back inside. That was the moment something shifted. I don't know how else to say it. Not romantic. Not dramatic. Just the specific feeling of being present with someone during something that matters. We'd been there about an hour when a black SUV rolled slowly into the clearing. Clean. Expensive. Completely out of place against the overgrown grass and the peeling cabin. A man got out. Mid-50s, well-dressed, the kind of confident that comes from being in rooms where people agree with you. He smiled and walked toward us with his hands in his pockets like he'd been invited. "Good afternoon. Victor Langford. Can we help you?" Emma asked. I was wondering when Eleanor's heirs would finally come out here. He looked around the property with the expression of someone calculating rather than appreciating. "Beautiful land. Then, I'd like to make you an offer." He talked about development, tourism, economic benefit to the area. He had an answer for every hesitation before anyone voiced it, which told me he'd done this before and often. "Look," he said, and his voice shifted slightly, less boredom, more something approximating sincerity, "I'm not the villain here. Half of Cedar Ridge survives on tourism dollars. A resort expansion creates jobs. Real ones. I've been trying to build something that helps this town for 12 years, and this land is the missing piece." It was a better argument than I expected. I'll give him that. The number he quoted was significant. The kind of number that makes you quiet. But it was the urgency that bothered me. He wanted an answer within the week. He had reasons for it, permits, timelines, investor commitments, and every reason sounded reasonable on its own. When his SUV disappeared down the road, the three of us stood in the clearing. Emma said, "He knew her name." "Eleanor," Ava said. "He said it like he knew her." Neither of them looked sure what to do with that. I couldn't explain exactly what bothered me yet. But something did. I kept coming back to it that night and the next morning, like a word you can't stop mispronouncing even when you know it's wrong. Why show up the same day? How did he know they were there? A few days later, Emma called me. Their SUV had been repaired, they were back at the resort. Victor had sent another offer. Higher than the first. "What do you think?" she asked me. "I think you shouldn't make this decision this week." A pause. "Ava says the same thing." "Ava's smarter than both of us." Emma laughed. Not the easy laugh from the cabin. Something tighter. "I keep thinking about what he said. About the town. About jobs. What if he's actually right and we're just being sentimental?" "That's a real question," I said. "Worth sitting with. Just not this week." The offers kept coming. Emails. A letter at the resort. One afternoon Emma found a handwritten note that had been slipped under the door. It wasn't threatening. Just relentless. "Call US before making a decision. He's not wrong that the town needs economic activity," Emma told me one evening on the porch of Eleanor's cabin. We'd started spending time out there, mostly just sitting and looking at the mountains. "I'm not going to pretend that's not a real thing." "No," I agreed. "But there's something about the water rights I want to understand better. Before anything." That was Emma being sharper than her smile made her look. It was Ava who found the geological survey. She'd been going through a box of old documents, the kind of papers nobody thinks to look at, receipts, old survey maps, correspondence. She pulled out a report and brought it to me without saying anything. Just handed it over. The survey identified a natural underground spring on the property. The water supply was unusually large. Large enough, the attached report noted, to support significant development in the surrounding area. Including a resort. Ava watched me read it. That's what he actually wants. Not the cabin. Not the trees. The water. 12 years, Emma said quietly. She'd found the journal entries by then, the same story on different dates across decades. Victor's company, The offers, Eleanor's refusals, year after year. She knew the whole time. She didn't just refuse him, Ava said. She refused him over and over. For 12 years. We sat with that for a minute. Okay, Emma said. Then again, okay. And something in her face went from uncertain to settled. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm nobody had planned. The sisters extended their stay at the resort. Then extended it again. Then eventually stopped talking about leaving, which seemed to mean the same thing. Most mornings we drove out to Eleanor's property and worked. Clearing brush, sorting through boxes, repairing whatever needed repairing. I fixed the porch first because I couldn't look at it without calculating the load-bearing issues. Ava spent 40 minutes one afternoon arguing with a blackberry vine that had grown through the fence and refused to release its grip on anything. She eventually won, but the vine made her earn it. Emma managed to get paint on her face, her shirt, and her hair on the same day, which I still maintain should have been physically impossible. How? Ava said, staring at her. I don't know, Emma said. You painted yourself. I was multitasking. Multitasking painting a wall somehow resulted in paint on your ear. I'm not going to explain my process. The laughter that came out of that echoed through the old cabin in a way that I thought Eleanor probably would have liked. Or at least tolerated. I fell through the second porch step while carrying lumber about 2 weeks in. Not all the way through, just enough that I went down one leg, dropped the lumber, and sat there for a second genuinely reconsidering my life choices. Emma didn't laugh. She waited until I was back on my feet. Then she laughed for approximately 45 seconds. I'd told her the porch needed work. People from Cedar Ridge started showing up, the way they do in small towns, without announcement, with food. Mr. Bennett from the hardware store brought supplies and didn't charge his usual markup, which was the closest thing to charity I'd ever seen from him. A retired electrician came out to check the wiring and stayed for lunch. Margaret, who had lived 2 roads over from Eleanor for 30 years, appeared one afternoon with a box of photographs Eleanor had given her over the years. I thought these belonged here, Margaret said, setting them on the kitchen table. Emma spent an hour going through them. At one point she held up a photo, Eleanor laughing at something, eyes squinted shut, completely unself-conscious about it. She looked so happy, Emma said. Margaret smiled. She usually was. Even when things were hard. A pause. She just decided she was going to be. I always thought that was something you chose, after seeing her do it. Emma looked at that photo for a long time. After Margaret left, she was quiet in a different way than usual. Not sad. Just rearranged somehow, like something had settled. One afternoon I got to the property early to start on the fence and found Emma already there, sitting on the repaired porch steps reading the journal. She hadn't heard my truck. I almost went back to get coffee and come back later, but she looked up before I could decide. We sat together on those steps for a while before starting work. Neither of us said much. The creek downstream from the spring was audible through the trees. A woodpecker was doing what woodpeckers do. Can I ask you something? Emma said. Sure. Did you ever think about leaving Cedar Ridge? After Lauren? I thought about how to answer that honestly. Yeah. For about 6 months, I thought about it pretty seriously. What stopped you? I don't know. I think I just ran out of somewhere else to go. I picked up a piece of bark off the step. Or I got stubborn about it. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. She nodded like that made sense to her. What about you? I asked. Were you happy? Before this? She took a moment. I was fine. I had a full life. Good job. Good apartment. A pause. Fine is not the same as happy. I knew that, but I'd gotten used to not looking at it too directly. I didn't say anything. She wasn't asking me to. The day Victor made his final offer, he showed up with a folder and a number large enough that even Ava went quiet for a moment. He sat across from us at the old kitchen table. His suit was out of place against the newly painted walls, the repaired shelves, the photographs Eleanor's neighbors had returned. I want you to understand something, he said. His voice was different this time. Less polished. I'm not trying to destroy something here. I know how it looks. But I've spent a lot of years on this project, and people in this town would benefit from it. Real people. He paused. Your grandmother was a stubborn woman. I respected that even when it frustrated me. It was the most human thing he'd said in any of our conversations. I believed him, actually. That didn't change anything. Emma looked at the paperwork for a long moment. Then she slid it back across the table. We appreciate the offer, Victor. We're not selling. He sat there. Nodded once. The disappointment was genuine, not a negotiating tactic, just a man who'd been trying to close something for 12 years watching it close the other way. Your grandmother would have liked you, he said. Then he picked up his folder and left. After his SUV disappeared down the road, none of us said anything for a minute. Then Ava said, we should do something with the spring. Emma, what do you mean? Something public. Something the town can use. I've been thinking about it. She looked slightly uncomfortable saying it out loud, like the idea had become real now that she was voicing it. I don't know exactly what yet. But something. Emma looked at me. I shrugged. I know some people who could help figure that out. Word spread fast. By evening half of Cedar Ridge seemed to know the property wasn't being sold, and people were genuinely glad in a way that surprised the sisters. Not because they'd turned down money, but because something Eleanor had protected was staying put. 6 months later, the property looked like something different. The broken windows were replaced. The porch was solid. Fresh paint. Flower boxes under the windows that Emma had found in the shed and repaired. The trails we'd cleared all the way down to the creek were marked and open. The old wooden swing overlooking the water had been restored, new chain, sanded seat, solid as anything. Eleanor had clearly used it a lot. You could tell by the way the branch above it had grown around where the rope used to be. On a warm Saturday in June, the property was full of people. Music through the trees. Kids running across the grass. Mr. Bennett at a grill, telling the same story for the 4th time. Margaret with her box of photographs, showing anyone who'd look. Ava had started a small hiking and nature tour business using the trails around the spring. She was good at it, organized, knowledgeable, very no-nonsense in a way that people who wanted to spend time outdoors apparently appreciated. She'd stopped mentioning going back to the city sometime around March. Emma stayed too. That one I think I'd known for a while. At one point during the gathering she came and stood beside me near the porch railing. We watched Margaret show a group of kids a photograph of Eleanor. I've been thinking, Emma said. About how if my car hadn't broken down that night, she stopped. Yeah. She was quiet for a moment. I probably would have gone back to the city in a week and sold this place to Victor and lived the exact same life I was already living and never known what I was missing. I looked out at the property. The people moving around it. Ava gesturing animatedly at a trail map with a small group near the tree line. The creek audible somewhere below. That would have been a shame, I said. She looked at me sideways. Not asking anything. Just looking. Yeah, she said. It would have. People ask me sometimes when I knew things had changed. Like there was one specific moment. But that's not how it works. Or at least it wasn't for me. It was dozens of moments. Coffee figured out without being asked. A step I should have fixed 6 months earlier going out from under me while someone laughed until they had to sit down. An afternoon on a porch step not saying much. A hand handing me a water bottle at the end of a long day, just because. None of those moments feel like a story. They feel like a life. Their car broke down on a back road in October, in the dark, with a storm coming. 2 strangers looked at a man they'd just met and asked if they could stay the night. And somehow all 3 of us ended up somewhere we hadn't been in a long time. Home.